State vs. Steele. By Justin Lemaster. Overview. The case of State vs. Steele involves a Cincinnati police officer and the highly unethical actions that he took in getting a false confession to a string of robberies. The officer used coercion, intimidation tactics, and blatant misuse of his power to ensure he got what he wanted. These actions of misconduct are only the top layer of the officer's abuse of power, and once investigated brought forth even more unsettling information. This case raises many questions into how things were handled not just by the arresting officer but also others involved in the case. To protect the identities of minors, the court only provides initials and documentation in reference to R.M., the son of Miss Alicia Maxton, taken into custody by the officer. Background. During May of 2009, police officer Julian Steele was investigating a string of 6 robberies within a neighborhood in Cincinnati, Ohio. A local resident of the neighborhood informed police that they had seen a car driving suspiciously after one of the robberies occurred, and promptly gave police the license plate number to the vehicle. The vehicle was then traced back to an Alicia Maxton. Police officer Julian Steele. Steele's initial actions. Steele investigated into Mrs. Maxton's background and found that she had 3 children in the schools in which they were attending. Officer Steele proceeded to go to the school of R.M., one of Mrs. Maxton's children, and put him and 2 other juveniles in custody, then proceeded to search their lockers. After searching the 3 juveniles' lockers, Steele placed R.M. in handcuffs and put him in the caged back seat of his police car. Steele had also spoken with school employees and told them not to inform Mrs. Maxton that he had taken her son R.M. into custody. The day after taking the minor into custody, Steele informed employees at the school that he knew the boy was innocent. Question? When first reading through the case, my initial question was why Officer Steele chose to immediately go after Alicia Maxton's children rather than that of trying to track down the vehicle or Miss Maxton herself first. Another issue I have here that I feel should have been a huge red flag is when he tells the employees working within the school to not inform the boy's parent or guardian that he is being taken out of school and is in police custody. I feel that some blame as to what proceeds after R.M. is taken into custody can in some way be seen as misconduct by the school for not noticing the odd request of Officer Steele and immediately informing the boy's mother of what occurred. The interrogation. While in custody at the police station, R.M. was not at any point made aware of his Miranda rights. It was only after being subjected to extensive interrogation by Officer Steele that he was informed of these rights. However, R.M. did not match the description of any of the robbers, and strongly denied any involvement in, and knowledge of the robbers. Steele proceeded to intensively interrogate the young man and coercively threatened R.M. by telling him that if he did not admit to committing the robberies, that R.M.'s mother and siblings would be kicked out of their house, and his mother would go to jail, and that his siblings would be separated. Overwhelmed by the pressure, R.M. gives in and falsely admits to the robberies. At which point Officer Steele read him his Miranda rights and taped R.M.'s coerced false confession. Officer Steele was then able to bring up charges formally against R.M. using the young man's false statement, convicting him of the 6 robberies and imprisoning him in juvenile detention. Question? How can Officer Steele go against everything in which his job entails as to so aggressively interrogate a minor, knowing full well that he's completely innocent of the charges? Here he takes advantage over the young man's lack of knowledge about the law and rights entitled by them to coercively force him into folding and taking blame for the robberies. At no point does Officer Steele act ethically throughout these proceedings. Steele's true motive. Over the duration of R.M.'s time spent in juvenile detention, Officer Steele persuades Alicia Maxton, R.M.'s mother, to meet with him repeatedly under the impression of discussing her son's case. Steele eventually convinces Miss Maxton to come by his apartment and tells her that he would be able to get R.M. out of juvenile detention, but that would be a very lengthy process. While Miss Maxton is visiting Steele at his apartment on one occasion, he asks her to engage in sexual intercourse with him, and that he's the only one who had the power to have her son released to juvenile detention. Mrs. Maxton complies in having sex with Officer Steele and later states that she did so because she was led to believe that he had power over her son's release. Question: although Officer Steele is blatantly demonstrating a misuse of his power, and again coercive tactics, this portion of the case has me slightly confused. I find Miss Maxton's reasoning as to why she had sex with the officer to be somewhat suspicious. Is she really so unaware how the criminal justice system works to think that having sex with the arresting officer in her son's case would get him released? The web's unraveling. During RM's 9-day stay in juvenile detention, Officer Steele informed the assistant prosecutor of RM's non-involvement in the robberies and that he had only locked up RM to compel his mother to cooperate with the interrogation. The prosecutor had mistakenly thought that RM was released the day of his arrest and was sent home. However, when she found out that the boy was still locked up on the 9th day, she dismissed his charges and released him. After releasing RM, the prosecution questioned Steele on his actions, and at this point Steele went on record admitting that RM was excluded for the suspect list prior to his 9-day lockup. Steele also admitted that he had told the boy's mother, Alicia Maxton, that he did not believe her son committed the robberies, as well as that he thought RM's confession was falsified. During Steele's questioning, he added that he does not arrest people based on eyewitness testimony alone, but that he incorporates a technique known as bullshitting, which is done through arresting people on less than probable cause in hopes that something good will come of it. Question: if we as a society are supposed to trust those whose jobs it is to protect us and enforce laws, how can we do so when those people utilize techniques like bullshitting to help justify a means to the end result they come up with? The fact that when confronted about his unethical behavior, Officer Steele used the excuse of arresting RM as techniques to try and somehow come up with some credible information that would help him solve the robberies is infuriating and, no pun intended, straight bullshit. Charges. After questioning, Steele was brought up on 10 charges, which included 2 counts of intimidation, 2 counts of abduction, 1 count of sexual battery, 2 counts of rape, 3 counts of extortion. Trial and sentencing. At trial, Steele was found guilty on the charges of intimidation and abduction of RM. However, he was acquitted of the remaining charges and received a mandatory 5 years in prison with an additional 5 in community control. Steele's appeal made it all the way up to the Ohio Supreme Court, but the decision was upheld.